Hello, and welcome to the Learn JavaScript series. In this video, we are going to discuss the basics of JavaScript functions. Let's get started. Along with variables and conditional statements, functions are one of the most important foundational pieces of programming. Generally speaking, functions are self-contained pieces of code that perform a specific task or action. Functions typically take in pieces of data, do something with that data, and then usually return a result. Once a function has been defined, it can be called over and over from other places in the program. First, let's take a look at how to define a function. Functions consist of a couple different pieces and always follow the same pattern. To declare a function, we must first use the function keyword with a space at the end, followed by the name of the function. The name of the function is how we'll call and reference the function from other places, so it is important to give the function a descriptive name. After the name, we include parentheses, and within those parentheses is the list of parameters, each separated by a comma. A pair of parentheses always comes after the function name, even if there are no parameters. In that case, it will just be an open and closed parentheses with nothing in between them. After the parameters and closing parentheses is the function body, which is wrapped with curly brackets. After the parameters and closing parentheses is the function body, which is wrapped with curly brackets. The statements that make up the function body will typically be indented slightly, so that when reading the program, it is clear that the function body is contained by the outer wrapping of the function declaration. This indentation makes it easy to differentiate between code inside versus outside of a function. Here is an example of a simple function that adds two numbers together and returns the result. The function is named sum, and it takes two parameters, number 1 and number 2. Similar to variables, parameters can be named whatever you'd like, so it is important to choose a name that is descriptive and helpful. The return statement is used to specify the value that gets returned by the function. In this case, the addition of number 1 and number 2 gets evaluated first, and the return statement gets evaluated second, so that the return value is the sum of the two numbers. Now that we've defined a function, we can call that function from within the program. To call a function, first you need to reference the name of the function. In this case, our function is called sum. Second, you need to specify the parentheses that wrap the arguments. If there are no arguments, the parentheses will be empty. Since our sum function has two parameters, we'll pass two numbers. The arguments that are passed when the function is called will be passed to the function parameters that we defined as number 1 and number 2. In order to get the results of our function, we can use the console log, or we can set the result of the function to a variable. Let's make a new variable called result and set it equal to the result of our called function. Now, if I console log the variable result, it should contain the value of our function return, which in this case is the addition of two numbers. We can call this function multiple times with different arguments, and it will always return the sum of the two values that we set. This allows us to reuse small pieces of code that do a specific action instead of rewriting it every time we need the same functionality. Additionally, functions allow us to jump in execution to different parts of the program by calling different functions. In the execution of a program, calling a function will jump to the body of that function, execute the body, and then return to where the function was called from. This allows us to write many functions in different areas of the codebase that have different contexts, and then call them from a general flow to create a smooth flow of execution that is easy to read and understand. An example of this is the flow of a login form. Once a user submits a login form, multiple things need to happen. We need to retrieve that login information, the username and the password, and parse it to make sure that all the values are correct and present. Then, we need to validate the login information and check the password against a value in a database. Lastly, if the validation was successful, we can set a session for the user and log them in successfully. Using functions, we can separate each of these pieces into different reusable chunks and then call those functions in sequence, which makes it really easy to step through the program and understand the flow of events. To reiterate, functions are one of the most fundamental building blocks in JavaScript. It will help you to split code that performs a specific task into a reusable function, and creating many small reusable functions is a great way to perform complex actions while maintaining clean and readable code. There is so much more to learn about functions, but this video just aims to provide the basics to just get started. In other videos, I'll discuss in depth function scopes, the function call stacks, as well as some best practices for using named parameters and default values. That wraps up this introduction to JavaScript functions. As always, in the description of the video, there will be a link to the code sandbox that contains the code that I've written. Feel free to take a look at that and play around with it. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great day.